What to do? The question we're confronted with every project we take on. This is also what Bruno Latour asks in his book, Down to Earth, Politics in the New Climatic Regime. He says, first of all, generate alternate descriptions. And I continue to quote from him, existing as a people and being able to describe one's dwelling place is one and the same thing. Maybe I do it this way. For me, this is the most compelling aspect of Latour's book, his challenge to us all to be better, more carefully observed, but also more imaginative cartographers. Artists, architects, writers, philosophers, scientists, and politicians, we must all, first and foremost, generate alternate descriptions of our surroundings, of the earth that lies directly below our feet. I can just use this if that's easier, but I still have to get the screen with the connection.
Use this one.
Yeah.
We changed to a computer backstage, so
Okay.
you move like this for your notes.
Yeah.
But the computer now is going to be backstage. Okay.
Okay. I think we've got, yeah, I think we're good. All right. Where was I? I'm going to quote Bruno Latour again. First of all, generate alternate descriptions, existing as a people and being able to describe one's dwelling place is one and the same thing. Oh boy. Okay.
So two things.
Yeah.
For your notes, you're using the computer.
I have to click both of them.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. All right. Hold on. Extra challenge here. I got to use both hands. All right. Yeah. So, for us, architecture can be understood as the crafting of alternate descriptions. In order to move forward, in order to progress, improve, we need different ways of seeing what is already right in front of us. Whereas modernism and its contemporary incarnations obsess with the future, we think that the present and past deserve just as much of our attention. We think of design as an act of radical reuse of materials, yes, but also geometries, narratives, habits, and atmospheres, a kind of deep survey and remapping of the systems that surround us. The Asterisms project by the artist Gabriel Orozco shows the power of collecting, of simply looking around, gathering, and trying to make sense of the things that surround us. In our office, Neiheiser Argyros, we treat every project as a kind of adaptive reuse project. Not only are we looking closely at how to reuse an existing building or site, but we're also constantly gathering objects, ideas, texts, and forms, and reusing them in new ways in our projects. This collecting impulse also guided our project for the 2018 Greek Pavilion at the Venice Biennale, where we mapped out a constellation of academic commons from around the world and throughout time. And it also guides the way we organize and reflect on our own work in the form of our website, where projects are organized by location, time, size, and shape. Tonight, I'll quickly share 4 recent projects with you, 2 in London, 2 in Athens, 2 completed, 2 still under construction, each different attempts at generating alternate descriptions. The first project is a literal adaptive reuse project, trying to bring back to life a tired and abandoned 6-story office building. The site is in Marousi, just down the road. The existing building was just about as ugly as we could imagine, with no discernible logic in its organization or form. And it was being developed along with Hellenic Properties, who's here this evening, I think. And we could not remove anything or add anything to it, so we were really stuck with this monster. The breakthrough came when we began to accept its kind of obscene form and embrace it as a kind of surreally beautiful monster made of radically different logics that had been crudely combined, similar to the surrealist or Dada exquisite corpse constructions. We tried to embrace this weirdness and tried to reveal the building's true self more fully, finding the unique forms hidden within the mess and working to describe each of them as unique elements. With the weird power of something like a Morandi painting, awkward and ambiguous volumes in dialogue with one another. The building becomes a literal sum of its parts then. So from this, we revealed this. Somewhat scaleless, is it a small city, a pile of blocks, or a building? The front elevation is more neutral, but still a collection of different finishes for each volume. A clear and legible entrance. And the roof offers a new landscape space for work and leisure under the shade of a new pergola, with views across the city. At the interior, we stripped back the foam formwork to reveal the original structural coffers and added a series of distinctive objects to organize this internal workspace. Bookshelves, hot desking tables, an event amphitheater at the ground level, the entry lobby desk, and a stair connecting to the mezzanine. Seen within its urban context, it's just another casual accumulation of different characters. The project tries hard to give an alternate description to what already existed, exaggerating and amplifying the unique character of each building geometry, revealing a clearer sense of the original building's underlying DNA, an exquisite corpse of different ideas brought into conversation with one another. The second project is located on the North Greenwich Peninsula in East London. We were commissioned to build a screen to hide this mess of infrastructure. The North Greenwich tube station is below the ground, and all of the exhaust vents and fire stairs existed here, an inconvenience for the commercial ambitions of the developer for the surrounding area. But we saw this obstacle, the seemingly ugly mass, as an important part of the existing landscape, mysterious in function and ambiguous in shape. Almost like an iceberg adrift in this new public space. And also like an iceberg in that it suggested just the tip of a much larger infrastructural system below. Our proposal was to wrap the tip of the iceberg in a form as ambiguous as the underlying object, and at the same time choose a material that would both hide and reveal the existing condition. Perhaps paradoxically, we used a very industrial material here, corrugated aluminum sheet metal, to mask the already industrial. The shape was partially informed by the site pressures and access requirements. We were interested in its potential as both an object and a screen that could be both solid and translucent. We developed a few key details to refine the overall appearance, taking this industrial material and shifting the perception of it. Some photos of the construction next to the O2 Arena overlooking Canary Wharf. The material responds quite dramatically to the changing lighting conditions, at times like glass or a silk curtain, at other times completely opaque, and here both conditions at once. A large media screen on one side of the project announces upcoming shows at the O2 Arena, creating a spectacle at night. It's an object hidden in plain sight, a kind of viewing device that provides an alternate description of the infrastructure that lies beneath, obscuring but not hiding it from the public. The third project is the landscape and public realm design for the austere marina in Vugliagmeni, still under construction, but close to finished. It's a unique challenge to design a landscape where there is currently no land. One way of thinking about this is that it's a blank site, a void, a kind of map with nothing on it, a tabula rasa. But of course, this isn't the case. The sea and the seabed are a complex landform, dynamic and hidden. We started by looking at ways of representing this sea landscape, the nautical charts and maps that try to represent this land that is both above and below the waterline. Most charts are obsessed with the elevation of the seabed, the depth of the water, the height of the land. We were inspired by the aesthetic of contours, traces of the land projected onto a 2D surface, and the relationship between representation and reality. Of course, there is some land on the site in the form of the previously existing marina, but that wasn't always the case. Here's an aerial photograph of the site taken at the end of World War II, where we see the natural shape of the site with its beaches and coves and original islands. We found this really exciting, this history of the landscape before the current marina, and wanted to try and tell the geologic story of this site in our design. So we tried to understand this original condition by overlaying a global north-south grid, and we uncovered old nautical maps that showed the underwater contours of the original site. And then we overlaid the site that we were given by the marine engineers for the project. The shape is obviously a response to different forces, the logistics of yacht movement, the economies of mooring spaces, along with the need to resist winds and waves. We projected the historic contours of the site onto this new flat site of the marina ground, the historic islands and coves becoming graphic tangles of lines projected onto the site. This new marina logic had its own local grid, the orientation of the central rectangular basin. So we overlaid the local with the global, creating a 2-meter locally oriented grid across the entire site. And next we created our own islands on the site, barriers between the water's edge and the cars on the site. And that's how we generated the basic design for the landscape. It's a giant map of the history of the site, literally drawn into the hardscape. Here we're reminded of the Borges short story on the exactitude of science, where he imagines a physical map that attempts to be so accurate that it coincides point for point with it. It's a map that is as accurate as the reality it represents. The map is the territory. Of course, there were lots of other motivations for the projects. It emerges out of a unique local history of the historic resorts on the peninsula, the archaeology, the local plant and animal species, and also the global ambitions for this marina with kind of global brands and the shopping destinations. It's both local and global, and our design used the geometry to try and suggest this as well. This is a drawing we did to summarize the many elements of the project, the overlay of different systems, the graphic character of nautical maps, the materiality of the site, the local and the global, in compelling friction. The primary elements of the project are therefore these: an orienting grid, the one-to-one drawing of the historic contours, new green islands scattered across the site, and a new inhabitable retaining wall that reshapes the existing landscape. Zooming in these same elements, the project as a new ground composed of 3 systems: grid, contour, islands. A bit more detail about each of these. The orienting grid rotated 23 degrees off of global north, itself stable around the central basin, but clashing with the geometry of the pier further out. We created a hierarchy of materials from expensive to economical: basalt, Portuguese pavers, and two-toned asphalt. Here's some mock-ups trying to create a checkerboard grid from the 2 types of basalt, creating a low-resolution checkerboard. Here the installation of the Portuguese pavers, the beach beneath the road, and some images of the grid maintaining its orientation at points beyond the central basin, reminding visitors of their location relative to that local grid. And here literally the one-to-one drawing taking place by the contractors on site and the installation of the 2-toned asphalt. The historic contours. We had Picciones in mind, and it was important that these contours carry meaning, so we designed stainless steel elevation markers as annotation on the one-to-one drawing. The interaction of the contours with the grid and other landscape features. Channeling Picciones, we proposed to use marble offcuts from nearby quarries in the contours. Arrange them casually, testing some of the arrangements on site, some of the first mock-ups of the arrangement and the installation. And here the contours make their way onto the green roofs of the marina buildings as white pebbles in a softscape grid. And finally, the planted islands. When we started the project, we looked at other marinas and we were struck by how harsh of an environment they typically are, especially in the space directly behind the boats, more infrastructural than public realm, a mostly concrete space for cars and power connections. Instead of this, we proposed moving the primary car locations to the back of the site, behind a green buffer. And these are some more tests of the relationship between grid, contour, and island. Here you start to see the effect of a new topography on the site. This isn't just the neutral flat land of a new marina pontoon. There is life here, there is nature, however artificial. At the back of the site, closer to the existing Four Seasons Hotel, there's a 6-meter elevation change. Instead of a flat retaining wall, we wanted to create terraces and habitable spaces for new plants. We looked at the historic agricultural stone walls on the islands and created a much more terraced section made out of gabion walls. We liked gabion walls in order to avoid the need for concrete and mortar and to further echo the aesthetic language of grid and contour. We proposed 4 different size rocks stratified to create different size microenvironments to support a range of local bug and animal life on the slope. And here's those gabion walls just a few weeks ago. There's many other aspects of the project, but there's not time to go into it right now. There's paths, furniture, fountains, pergolas, stairs, but that's enough to give you a basic sense. Here's a drawing that shows all the elements coming together in the proposed design. At the control tower building, at the area around moorings, at the windward pier. There's a certain surrealism in the making of new ground, the sheer labor and the optimism of the whole endeavor. And this is what it looks like, again, just a few weeks ago. And finally, the 4th project, a very humble project that's under construction now in London. It's an adaptive reuse of a Victorian garden outbuilding. The brief was an interior cabinet to store books, records, and art, and an exterior canopy to shield from the rain. We created a single long cabinet that extends from inside to outside and supports the canopy. The alternate description in this case was of gravity, a force we take for granted. Our intuition was that the canopy and the storage cabinet could be related, but a tension between them had to be created in order to hold them in relation. We were reminded of the work of Fischli and Weiss in their series of photographs that capture the precarious moment of balance just on the verge of collapse, a kind of provisional codependence. And so we created a simple canopy, but we described the path of gravity in a non-intuitive way. We created precarity by removing a column. So instead of the top left, the bottom left. And then created a provisional order with a counterbalance in the form of a tension rod and a weight on top. It's an alternate description of the forces of the site, which we think amplifies the banal and makes something unexpected in the process. In its realized form, the counterweight is a solid chunk of marble that has been milled to fit within the web of a galvanized I-beam. The tension rod is expressed at the right. Stainless steel cabinet panels both reflect the garden and reveal what's contained within, extending continuously from inside to outside. Here's the tension rod. And the basic materials of marble, steel, and polycarbonate, legibly stacked one on top of one another. Raw and refined, held closely together. And the ever-changing garden made visible through the design. So 4 projects that in their own unique way each generate alternative descriptions of their historic and contemporary condition. A surreal, exquisite corpse office building, a seductive infrastructural iceberg, an inhabitable map of the territory, and a precarious reflection of a small London garden. In our practice, we are convinced that design is a form of mapping. We must look closely at our surroundings, from up close, from inside, from a bird's eye view, from far away. Only in this way can we come down to earth, understanding our local patch of soil as simultaneously also the entire world. Thank you.